tell me if I say something wrong.
Okay.
I'm Marie Thompson, elementary school teacher in a semi-private school, but we have lots of contact with local youth groups and hear lots of stories of hurting kids, and I'm interested in any form of dialogue to encourage kids.
Hi, I'm Dear Williams. I'm a sophomore at Rondout Valley. Right now I live in Stone Ridge, but I'm from Ellenville. And I'd love to do restorative justice work in our school, but I'd also love to, my initial interest was in repairing dialogue in the Ellenville community between police and community.
Diana Zuckerman. I'm a Spanish teacher at Rondout Valley High School, which is right down the hill here, and I'm also the advisor for the Rondout Valley High School Human Rights Club, and I'm also on the Ulster County Human Rights Commission, and we have a restorative justice center in Kingston that I would love to be more involved in, and we do have training, or we've had training for certain people in our school district in restorative practices. So I'm definitely very interested in it. And I go to a lot of police community forums in Kingston in reconciliation, reparations. So it's something that I'm interested in. We have SRO officers, school resource officers in our schools. And I think that that's something also that I'm curious about, is increased dialogue and connection between the officers and all the stakeholders.
Hi, I'm Janine Brutvan. I'm a special education teacher in Pine Bush. I was an at-risk youth, and I now work with at-risk youth. And I'm looking for any way to improve those connections. I'm struggling because I live in a community in New Paltz that is very anti-SRO, student resource officers, and yet I work in a school where I see where these connections are being made, and that our officer, Officer Kenny, he sits and eats lunch with these kids, and they have a relationship with a police officer that I could not have imagined at their age. So I'm kind of torn in my feelings. And this is my daughter.
Yeah, I'm a junior at New Paltz High School. My name's Lydia. What?
But I also run a human rights academy in the summer at my school. Sorry.
Okay. Especially this year in my AP English class, it's very, like, my teacher is very provocative in the questions that he asks, and I adore the conversations and discussions that I have with my peers, and that's really my big thing, is debating. And I'm honestly, right now, I'm trying to work to make the transition from a more aggressive debate to a more balanced level discussion. So that's mainly why I'm here.
My name is Carolyn Hansen. I live in Stone Ridge. I'm a lawyer, mediator, healer, teacher of meditation. I'm running for the Ulster County Legislature. I've been involved in restorative justice for 20 years through lawyer organizations and psychologist organizations. And part of why I'm running for the legislature is I want to help our county and our Restorative Justice Center and our potential county DA, Dave Clegg, and our county sheriff do some really wonderful, innovative work. We've already started some wonderful things here, but there's much more. So that's why I'm here.
I'm Samantha Mendel. I'm a senior at the Mount Academy. And often at the Mount, we host police officers, and they like come and talk about drugs and stuff to us. So it'll be interesting to hear, like, kind of maybe from the other side as well, and learn how our police communities can work together better with kids in the area.
My name's Ingrid Beer, and I've sat on a lot of restorative justice circles, and but mostly I like to mediate, which I've done a lot of small claims court and custody visitation.
Hi, I'm Mark Pepper. I'm actually here by coincidence. It's my wife and I's 32nd anniversary. We came here for this weekend, not realizing this peace conference was going on. we've been here before, and we wanted to come here with our family. And then we saw, like, when we looked, what's the activities? We saw this peace conference just by coincidence. That's what I do. I'm involved with the Coalition for Peace Action in Princeton. I live in Princeton Junction, which is on the other side of the railroad tracks from Princeton. But I'm also involved with a lot of other community activist groups, including one called Kids Bridge, which does a lot of the same work that your River Phoenix, so we have to talk. But I'm very interested in dialogue. We also have SROs in our school district, which is a very controversial issue, and especially being in New Jersey, which have the safest gun safety laws. I mean, our SROs are armed, so it's a bit troubling. Yep. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Hi, I'm Sam Spears. I'm a campus chaplain. I work at Vassar College. We don't use a language chaplaincy anymore. I'm the Associate Dean for Religious and Spiritual Life and Contemplative Practices. And we're doing a new leadership building, community building cohort with students that especially makes me want to be part of this conversation.
Hi, my name is Hart Phoenix, and I am co-founder of the River Phoenix Center for Peacebuilding with Jeffrey. And I am here because we were invited. What an amazing thing to happen. We live in Florida. That's where we do our work. And I probably grab the mic from time to time and fill in some gaps if it's necessary. But I guess the first thing I wanted to say is that what we found when we started doing the police-youth dialogues is that we could replicate that same kind of dialogue, that same kind of 5 hours in schools with teachers and youth, with teachers and teachers, with the administration and the educators. It was a way to bring everybody into a circle, put their first names on there instead, whether it was the educator and the student or everybody had their first name and everybody had a chance to speak. And as Jeffrey said, we're starting with, well, you'll see some of it. We have a video from one of the dialogues I think we put together. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, I want to just show you this video real quick. It's 5 minutes. It gives a little context and overview. And then my wish was maybe to share 1 or 2 processes that we do. So you could, have you ever heard of the saying, steal shamelessly, share generously? Steal shamelessly, share generously. So we stole a lot of this stuff. And then what I'm really interested in actually is you guys looking at creating your own dialogue. So starting to map out who would you work with and what would you want to talk about and some steps in there. So let me see if I can get this thing going. So there's a whole presentation that I'm not going into, but I want to make sure we get back to this idea of sharing power. Okay, let's see if this works.
The badge, law enforcement, it represented something very negative, something very violent. As a child, the only time you see these people is when they come to take things, then you see them and you greet them as the takers, the conquerors. As a black male dealing with law enforcement, we feel this way. We knew that that badge meant something bad could happen to someone that we cared about.
So the conflict that exists between our African American, black and brown community members and law enforcement is not new. It's been happening for the last several hundreds of years. And yet it's so highlighted right now through the media. These tensions can have life or death consequences. And so we felt that it was really important to bring young black and brown youth together with cops.
I look at it like it's just too much misjudging going on and judging a lot of books by their covers and not noticing what people really have came from. Have you feeling like, why am I even born to even go through this?
I've been that person stopped by the police, and I've been that person that felt, like justice was just not right, or my treatment versus that it was not right.
They tend to judge, like everybody judge. And when I felt misunderstood is when the police didn't really allow me to talk.
The citizens have to be retrained, and so does law enforcement. And saying retraining them is just changing our way of thinking. If once you've had more positive experience than the negative, and you learn not to live off of the stereotypes, then we can make some real headway.
Things didn't begin to change for me until my freshman year of college. I got into a really nasty car accident. It was cold, it was raining, a police officer showed up. I'm sitting there and I'm crying, I'm in tears, and I'm just distraught. He showed me so much compassion, and he went above and beyond and stood there with me. He didn't have to sit in the rain with me with his arm over me. He just saw a human being, and it was just like this great angel. And we became brothers in that moment. For me and this having this negative encounter my entire life with the badge, and then this one occasion opened my eyes.
I think there may be only two groups in the United States that actually can understand each other. One, black young people. Two, the police. If to both sides, it seems that the world is misunderstanding them, it's a good time to say, you know what, let me open my heart up a little bit and listen to the pain of the law enforcement community. Listen to their fear. Listen to their sense of being labeled and wrong and misunderstood. Or let me listen to those African American kids. They can't take off their badge, they can't take off their uniform, but they still feel like they've got a target on their back because of their skin color.
And so what better opportunity to bring those groups together to address these challenges and come up with positive solutions and building relationships. So what have you guys heard about this thing we're doing tonight?
Actually, we haven't heard nothing but
You haven't heard anything? No, you don't know anything yet. We are hoping to affect some change by building some relationship between police officers and community. To witness these dialogues is truly a miracle, because you can feel the tension and sense that dynamic that exists. So much resistance for both of these groups coming together. And within the first half an hour, we're introducing ourselves and playing a game and kind of unpacking these ideas that keep those groups separate. And to see the bonding and the laughter and the understanding and the forgiveness and the tolerance that emerges for both of these groups is something that is so inspiring to observe and to witness. It gives all of us a lot of hope for moving this conversation and these relationships forward.
I would redefine my role as a police officer and recognize that my job wasn't just to arrest people. My job was to provide services and to be a social worker and to be a role model. And so I think when you redefine the role of law enforcement, you'll start to see a change within your community. You'll start to develop legitimacy, you'll start to develop trust.
I was actually invited to go and participate in the youth dialogue, and it broke down barriers that I didn't realize still existed with me as a deputy sheriff. That session really opened my eyes, and it was something that I realized that the La Chicana Sheriff's Office needed to embrace.
Spirit of Blue is an organization that funds law enforcement agencies for equipment, and we knew somebody on the board, and so we pitched the idea of equipment helps officers be safe. So we said, how about dialogues help officers be safe? And so they loved it, and Dunkin' Donuts funded us twice to do it in Gainesville, and then we did it in South Florida, and they want to do it again in Rochester, New York. So that was kind of a fun thing. So I'm not used to using the mic, but I guess they're listening in. I wanted to give you an experience of the A to Z exercise. And so what happens is that in our full training, we do the first hour with the cops, And one of my buddies, the two cops in there, Will Halvosa is a retired captain of 30 years, and then Paul Pardue, he had bald head, and both those guys are the DMC coordinators, and just amazing people, and they're really changing the system within. And so that first hour is around trauma, what is trauma, and adolescent brain development, and why as an officer is that important for them to understand, de-escalation techniques, what is DMC, disproportionate minority contact, how does that show up, this whole field of study called implicit bias. We all have bias, and so we want officers to understand the lens through which they see other people. And then towards the end of that first hour, we ask the cops to do this A to Z. And then I go with the young people. Here you go. Oh, you got pens there. Go ahead and set that up. And then I'm with the young people and welcome them and why are we here, you know, explain some of the goals of the program. And then we do this A to Z exercise. So this could be something very, very helpful and useful for you. So the instructions of it are, and what I'm suggesting is that you're going to say adjectives that describe your experience and perceptions of police, okay? So that's who we are. So so what is an adjective that describes cops that starts with an A and B and C? We're going to go through. You can have more than one. And the other thing to know is that they're not all angels and they're not all assholes. Right? That there's a whole continuum of who we are as human beings. And we'd like you to address that continuum. So what is a word that starts with an A that describes cops? And don't worry about cussing. What's that? Attentive. Attentive. Aggressive. Attentive, aggressive. Okay, we're going to move on. Assuming that's a good, she might not have room, but those are awesome. So attentive, aggressive. Yeah. Yeah. So who's got a B? Brave. Oh, brazen, sorry. To put brazen, now there you go. How about a C? And we can jump around too. If you got one on your head, pop it out here. Controlling, thank you so much. D. Dominating or dominant. What was your word? Dominate. Okay. E. Effective, okay. We'd really like to hear one word from everybody, so please jump in, even if it's not in order. Okay. Sensitive? Insensitive, okay. Insensitive. How about F? Fearful, fearful, okay. G? Okay, we'll move on. H, helpful. J, you got one, DR? What's that? Justice. Okay. How about K? Go ahead, say it. There's a very common word that happens with cops with the K letter. Killers. Put that up there. That's, well, almost always get that. Liars. M. Manipulators. Malign. Awesome, awesome. N. What do you got? Diary. How do you say it? Oh, Diana, sorry. A nuisance, okay. Sorry, I maybe cut you off. Did you have another one? Negotiator, okay. O. Mark, did we get one from you yet? Sam? Did you say a word yet? Obtuse, okay. Obstinate. And what was that? Oppressive, okay. This is so great. P. Ray, you got another one? Any letter? Prejudice, okay. Super duper. Q. Quarrelsome. I like quirky. Quarrelsome. I like that. Ray's got that one. R. Random. Okay.
random. And S? Slippery, sadist. Wow. Marie, do you have another word? Any letter. Going to keep moving. Yeah, just speak it out if you have it. Oh, you still. Anybody got a T? Tough? Okay. Tyrant. I am so impressed. You guys are doing awesome words. However, I have not heard on this other end of the spectrum of valuable. Okay. Oh. Okay, grandiose. Good. And valuable. U, anybody got a U? Understanding. W. Sam, do we get another one? W, a word that describes cops. Oh, you're on X. What'd you say, xenophobic? Yeah. Xenophobic. The other thing that we say as an instruction is that you could use X-rated, extreme, extra, and the young people particularly love extra. Worldly, okay. Yes, please. Good. Okay. Good. Anybody got a Y or Z? Fine. Yelling. And Z, not too many words that go with Z for cops, but there's...
Kids always find...
Yeah. Zealous is one that is often used. Okay. So now we would say... if I'm with the kids, right, I would say the officers or the cops, and I use those words interchangeably, cops, officers, deputies, police, they're doing this list about you right now. But they don't know you specifically, just like you don't know them specifically, personally. And so these are kind of generalizations. And then I say, is there anyone in this group who's willing to read this list in front of the cops when we get together? And I always get somebody. Sometimes the kids fight about it. They want to do it.
And they also write.
Yeah, and it's wonderful if you give them the opportunity to write. Does anybody like to write up here? And a lot of times you'll get a volunteer. So what we do when we come together as two groups is we're sitting in a circle and we do I welcome them, hello, blah, blah, and then we do introductions. And we did introductions earlier, but the way I do it is that your name and something that you're proud of and something that you love to do. I think somebody mentioned this idea of kind of humanizing each other with talking about food or whatever. So these are simple things, but you like to, what's one thing you like to do?
Watch television.
Okay, I love to watch television. So you'd go around and every cops and kids or whoever's in the group gets to share that. And then I ask, what would you hope for that comes out of this opportunity for cops and young people to have a conversation? What do you hope for? What do you think could be an outcome? And so I do ask you, what would you hope for or imagine could come out of bringing these two groups together? Some increased understanding?
Reduced fear.
Okay, drop some fear down. What else? More cooperation? And
Deeper conversations.
yeah, deeper conversations. Build some trust in there. Yeah, or just a kid, right? Yeah.
Which means heightened respect.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is good. You were just leading there. So we get out in the field. What do you hope for? What's your vision? What's your intention? So in order for us to accomplish all of that, how do we want to treat each other? And so what I'm building is agreements, essentially. And then we go into how do we want to treat each other in order to hopefully manifest what you just said. Yeah, so we would get that on there. I personally don't use rules, but I do use agreements.
Is there another word for agreements or rules that you guys use? That's better? I'd love to learn a new word. So when, think about it, and interrupt anytime, when the word respect comes up, right, I always unpack it. Because your experience or manifestation of respect could very well likely be different, right, as we go around. But it seems to be core, particularly for young people. They want respect. And so we got to know, what does that mean to you? And we get all those out there. And then the next thing is we unpack this A to Z. And so the way I do it is that I get one kid and one cop, and I have them do rock, paper, scissors, 2 out of 3 to decide which list goes first. It's just a fun way, and you saw that in the video, right? The guy and the cop, like he either cheated or he didn't know how to play, right? And the kid was like, "Are you kidding me?" And it was so fun, right? Oh yeah! Oh my God! Thank you so much. We do a game early, and the game. Do you want to explain the game?
And the game, which game?
The wind blows.
The game is the wind blows, and so somebody's in the middle, like me, and I'm going to say something that's true for me, and if it's true for you, you need to get up and change the seat. One seat will be, my seat would be turned around. It's the same thing as have you ever. So it's like, if you did something in your life that if you were caught, you might have been arrested, and then people who, so most of the cops, almost all the cops get up and run, and the kids are like, and then they all get up, and whoever does, and then now the seats are mixed, and then the person that's left in the middle says whatever the next thing is that they come up with. Sometimes it's like if you're wearing shoes today or something like that. But most of the time we say, let's go as deep as we can. And so it's pretty if you grew up in one family of one person, if you've ever experienced trauma, if you lost, a parent or something like that.
Do you take your chair away so that
Just one chair. Only one chair is taken away. No, you sit down. Like I would sit back. You would end up.
No, we want everybody to play and participate.
Right.
But we did it with, the person that was left that had to do the next question. So we would take away a space.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. We just have one less seat, and then it rotates through, and one less seat, only in the beginning, just in the beginning. It doesn't reduce down.
No, it's not musical chairs.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, and Hart made a point that normally all the cops are over there and all the kids are over here. So this is a fantastic way, not only getting to know each other, but it mixes everybody up, and then they stay there, right? So one of the things that we, so in order to facilitate a conversation like this, because I have my own bias about cops, and I have bias about kids sometimes too, but in order to have a level of credibility to facilitate a conversation like this, you have to be able to set your stuff aside. Because if I were to call out a cop and, essentially throw them under the bus, I would lose credibility with the police. And so instead, if I still want to kind of reveal something, or what I call pull threads, right? A lot of these, so we have a discussion, we debrief this, and where does this come from, and which one of these do you think is inaccurate, and why did you use that word? And so we spend almost 40 minutes unpacking both of these lists. So this is an incredible launch into a really important conversation of where did these come from? What are they based on? And for killers, the way that I address that is I ask the cops, how many of you officers have ever had to use your weapon in the line of duty? And it would be incredibly rare. Usually it's none, occasionally it's one. It's very, very rare in our community. I know it's different in many other communities. And then how many officers have ever had to pull it? And they all raise their hand. And what I'm trying to distinguish there is that hopefully they have some discernment, right? And cops, generally speaking, it's a really bad thing for them to actually kill somebody. You know, it's on all levels, it's not good. So, but most young people think that all cops are killers. And so what we're doing is just kind of bringing some space in between many of these different words. Racist happens a lot. So besides, you know, having a certain temperament and skill set and ideally not get triggered easily, one other option is to have a partner. It would be good, you know, especially starting out, to have somebody else that can help hold the space if you get a little bit triggered, and to just, in that case, lean back and let somebody else pick it up. But one of the things that we're doing is what kind of questions do we ask to help deepen the conversation, right? How do you guide the process? Now, I do have steps that I'm happy to share with any or all of you if you want to see our actual steps. But what I'd like you to do, if you have a piece of paper, is to come up with a meaningful question. And what we do, if we have time, we do the iceberg that you saw up there. Most of you saw that, is we actually do the iceberg. What kind of behaviors do you see, whether it's violence or disruptive behaviors? And so we get a list above, right? The fighting, yelling, stealing, truancy, war, rape, etc. And then we ask, you know, what's going on below the waterline. Really powerful process.
So what drives that behavior? How come people act in that way? So that's what's under the waterline, which we didn't go into on that presentation earlier, which is very valuable because that helps to create some empathy, start to realizing, like cops say all the time, well, I had no idea that that's what was happening. They're just kids acting out. And so it starts to unveil and reveal the needs of their life that has them act in a particular way. And it's the same thing the other way around. It's that cops themselves have their own icebergs and their own areas of PTSD and their own areas of you know, shame and blame and so forth. So it humanizes everybody.
So what I'd encourage us to do for Mona, if you have a piece of paper and if you want to do this, is to come up with a meaningful question that you could ask. And you could ask it to the cops, you could ask it to the young people, you could ask it to teachers, anybody. So just do a quick little brainstorm, writing down a meaningful question that you think would stimulate thought and some self-reflection and some honesty. And do you want to do this, Ray? Because I'm sure one of these fine people would share a piece of paper, or you could just think of it in your head too.
I'll just think of it.
Okay. So take a minute to just whoop something up.
And those of you that are teachers or administrators, just ask,
Same process is what we're doing in schools. Yeah, put it down and let's hear it. And you'll get some feedback. Well, I'm suggesting you could be asking it to the police, you could be asking to young people, you could be asking to... No, you're doing your own just off the top of your head and heart. If you were to ask a meaningful question that would help deepen a conversation with a group, what would you write?
Just like a little backtrack on the one before the iceberg.
Yes.
So we show them like that image of that iceberg and we
Right.
express that concept.
Yeah.
And then the question, we say people act a certain way, and that's the tip.
Yeah.
Do certain behaviors, and then we say, why do you do it? Okay.
Yeah, let me show you real quick. This is how I do it.
I have that on the wall in my class.
The iceberg? I know, it's like, love the iceberg. And so what I do is I say, and we'll get to the questions in a second, I say, what is this? Like, oh, it's a tooth. It's Africa. It's ice cream. It's, oh my God, you're right, it's an iceberg. And then I'd say an iceberg is like a metaphor. You see what I'm wearing, but most of who I am you don't know. Same with everybody in the room. How much of an iceberg do you think is above the waterline? And you guys would say, oh, 20%, 30%, 15%. Oh my God, 15%, you're right. And so we do that. And then I ask, so what are some examples of violence or harm or disruptive behaviors that you see in the world? What are some examples? And you can just tell me right now. What are some examples? Rape. That's pretty extreme, but yes. What? Murder. What are some, how is violence expressed in the world? Terrorism. Terrorism. Bullying, yes. Bullying, lying. How do you spell lying? L-I-E? Thank you. This is another thing, is that I say, and this is really powerful for kids, that I'm not a great speller. And it's true. Like, I have some insecurity about it. And it actually kept me from doing this work for years. It's like, there's no way I'm going to be seeing misspelling words. Yeah. So then we fill up some more, and then I ask, so now, what might be going on for someone in their life that drives this behavior? That's my language. So, or causes this behavior. So what would be some examples of things that happen in people's lives that might cause them to do these things? Desperation. What's that? Yep. So I'll just put abuse. Fear. Is that what you said? Yep. And what I say is, if I didn't write it, I didn't hear it. So what else? War. Sure. Neglect. Oh my God. So I've never heard that before. Sociopathic behaviors. Poverty, yes. Poverty, death and loss, right? Other forms of trauma. Yep. Mental illness. Marginalization. Wow, you guys are very sophisticated. Marginalization. Wow. I hope they got that on tape. All right. So then you just keep unpacking this, right? And there's a point you got to stop because you got other things to do. And so then the question is, there's two options. One option is at this point just to say, why is this important? Right? Why is this important? And I am asking actually, why do you think that this might be helpful or important? This model. It decreases judgment. Yeah. What else? Can create some empathy. Yes. Why else might this be helpful? Okay. Shows that kids are not just acting out for no reason. Excellent. Yeah. So that helps set some context of like how we humanize each other, because this cop right here, he had his own experience, you as young people, etc. Another variation of this that I do like, that I started doing, is this idea, an additional line out here, to say, what are the resources that exist in real life, or you think they should be available to help people with this kind of stuff? Okay, so mentoring, right? Nature, counseling, yeah. And so then you get to fill that in. So this also helps to acknowledge, it gives some information to everybody, particularly young people, like, oh, I want some of that. And that there are strategies for addressing and supporting healing around these kinds of things. Absolutely, it would. It would. Yeah. Can you put those on for me, please?
This is very important when you do side is just, that's not justice. Yes.
So, any questions about the iceberg? It's kind of a simple model, but it's actually very profound and can help open up some stuff. So, who's willing to share your question?
This would be a question for the youth, and again, my question comes from my own personal experience. It is, what is your first memory that involved a police officer?
Love it. What is your first memory involving a police officer? Excellent. That's great, great, great. You know, honestly, I think that could be to anybody because cops have interactions with other cops, certainly, you know, a while ago. So that's excellent. Good. Who else? Yeah, I'll repeat the question. Go ahead. Nice. And would you most, to anybody or to cops or, that's a deep question. What are you most afraid of? Whoa, I love it. That's my kind of question. Yes, Dior. Wow. Have you seen or experienced racism within your colleagues? And okay, yeah, that's a powerful question. Yeah. One of the things that I find interesting and challenging is that black and brown cops are, generally speaking, an extreme minority in a law enforcement agency. It might be different in some cities, but by and large, there's not that many, right? And what I believe is that some of these cops feel like they have to kind of put on a face or put on some front to belong. They already are different. And if they stir stuff up more, there's an additional risk potentially. And so just consider that question in that light of like how do we ask that so that we would get a really honest answer. Because it's come up many times, that kind of thing. And I think sometimes it's challenging for cops of color to go there. But thank you. Yeah.
What would help you form connections, either with community members and students, or with police officer or law enforcement?
Nice. So what would help you form connections with others? With others, you gave some examples. What would help you form connections? So that sounds like NVC language to me, which I love, but a lot of cops wouldn't use that language, connections. So what would be another way, and maybe somebody else has a suggestion, what would be another way of framing or phrasing that question to get essentially the same thing? Yeah, how would you build relationships? Or, because you're saying, how can you build connection? So another word for connection is trust. I think when we have a level of trust, we usually have a level of connection. So how can we build trust? How can we increase trust between cops and kids, or the cops and the community? Right? Do you see that reframe a little bit? I think we're going for more or less the same thing, but it's a little different language. And in my experience, have you ever heard the phrase speak into the listening? Have you ever heard that phrase, speak into the listening? In other words, if I'm speaking, English and none of you understand English, you're just not going to understand me. If I'm speaking New England or Southern or something like that and it's not your listening, so how do we adapt some of our language so that cops can understand what the hell we're talking about, right? Because sometimes they're different. Yes?
I've done a lot of teacher training groups and things like that. People love to tell their professional stories about how they got into a profession. And I ask myself, sitting with people who have cops, but why not use the same question to say,
love it. Yeah. I love that. So why did you become a cop in the first place? Tell us a story of your experience. That's an excellent story. Yeah. And then Sam.
So if you feel like you've got to be like really brave and tough at work as a cop, then when you go home, do you feel like how can you be with your kids, your family, and just be regular or soft or open-hearted when at work you might feel like you have to close your heart?
I love that question. So another way to frame that is, let's say that you just had, a traffic crash, or you had to address a response to a dead baby, or a domestic fight, or something like that. How do you go home and deal with your family? What's that like for you, right? Because this is an experience that most cops have. They're going to see dead bodies. They're going to see accidents and things like that.
I think that's really important. These questions are important because when law enforcement responds to them, the kids are blown away because, they just, most of the time, not all of the time, and a lot is on TV, they just see them coming and harassing them for no reason, and it's true, it's for no reason. It's just, so what, but they don't realize that 3 hours earlier, they pulled somebody out of the car that didn't make it, or they have, I never thought of it. When I first met the sheriff to kind of ask if we could do this, and she was telling us some of the things that they had just gone through that week, my mouth dropped open. I just think that when a car accident happens, I drive away or I say a prayer, they're there going to see the parents, the people, they're pulling them out there in the hospital. I mean, it's PTSD all over again. So how do we start to, not give it away, just say, well, oh, they only did that because they have a hard job. I mean, people, we have to remember, we keep saying, everyone said today, that everything we do impacts everyone around us and the earth and the animals and it goes on. We're all connected. So how do we have empathy and at the same time help to create more responsibility and ability to respond in a nonviolent way, in a kind and loving way.
Okay, Sam, and then Ray, and then I want to just ask you one more question before we close it up. Yeah.
I was going to say, it can obviously go both ways, but more of an opener, what's one thing you would want, you can just fill in the blank either way, to know about you?
Yeah.
It's important for them.
Yeah. What's one thing that you would like others to know about you? There is a process that we learned from Challenge Day, which is an amazing program that goes into schools. Anybody ever heard of it? Oh my God, look it up, Challenge Day. And they say, if you really knew me, you'd know that I come from a family that is this or that, and then everybody gets a chance. And you could keep doing rounds. If you really knew me, and you could do it for 1 minute and just keep saying that, if you really knew me. And that is really, really powerful. Ray, do you have a question that comes to mind that you could ask a cop or anybody else?
Why do you carry a gun?
Okay. Why do you carry a gun? Yeah. Good. Anybody have another layer to that question? Because they're going to tell you, well, I would imagine they'd say for protection, it's my tool. Yeah.
My question was, what forms of violence have you personally experienced?
Wow, that's a deep question. What forms of violence have you personally experienced?
Because then one can find out the latest
Yeah.
that other people have.
Yeah.
So you realize.
Yeah. Yes. So let me give you an example, and then I want to get back to Ray. The very first time we ever did this, which is about 6 years ago or so, a kid said, "What's the most difficult thing you've ever overcome?" And 3 cops answered. The first cop said, "My father was beating my mother in the front seat of the car and dropped us off at the side of the road and left us." The second cop said, "I was sexually abused as a child." And the third cop said, "My younger brother accidentally killed my other brother with a gun."
The kids, like Hart was saying, just like, what? You know? These are the kinds of things that change people's perception and experience. And like Paul said, the more experience we have that are different than our perception, then we get those changes to occur. Okay? So this idea of like, why do you carry a gun? You know, yeah, I'm just, what else would you like to know about why they carry guns, or, you know, what else would you like to know about cops and guns?
Well, because ideally police are de-escalators.
Right.
I don't understand how a gun helps de-escalate a situation.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Awesome question. That's it. I don't understand how guns are used to de-escalate a situation. That's friggin' deep. That's excellent. And you're gonna get an answer out of that. And they'll explain.
Yeah, I'd like to just say that this only works when all parties agree to come and sit in circle. Again, you know, to remember this power over. I mean, it happens everywhere, and with parents and children, with teachers and children, with teachers and administrators, with the captain of the police department and the street cops. So it has to be where there's a willingness to come and sit and listen. And again, I said go on that first name basis, because that, especially when youth are involved, but really anybody, but particularly youth, do not have a voice most of the time. It's like, here's your lessons, do it, bring them in. Whatever happened to you last night is none of my business. I'm not a social worker. You know, pick it up and do it. I'm not your parent. Your parents should be doing it. It doesn't matter if there's no parents at home. I mean, so there's so many different things. Same things with kids on the street. They're on the street. They get caught by the cops for just snooping around. And there too, it's like, we have to start to develop deep understanding of the human condition and the fact that we have the ability to transform ourselves and our own behavior in relation to everyone else. So I'm really happy that we had this conversation. And
So how do you get the group that doesn't want to be there, given they're probably the group that needs to really be there, right? If people are willing to be there, well, they need to be there, but they're probably...
Well, most of these cops initially were voluntold to be there. Yes. You ever heard that before? Voluntold. They were there because that was the program, and they needed to be there, which was fine, actually. It worked out fine. Now, we did get some pushback, but, you know, there's groups of people that I still want to work with that, you know, would be much more difficult. And so in the restorative justice world, we would do lots of pre-circles. In a restorative justice, you never just jump right into the issue. You have to meet with each person first to prep them, hear their story, get clarity of what they want out of it. And so that's part of the process. But in, let's say, a law enforcement or schools, because a lot of, actually, frankly, some of the teachers are voluntold. This is happening and you need to go. And so ideally you have a majority of people that do want to be there. You need at least a core of people that are really intentional about having this conversation. And then it doesn't matter as much that you have some outliers that are like, this sucks, you know, wasting my time. If you can generate enough of a meaningful conversation and a question like that we reframed with Ray, those help, you know, and then people are like, no, I actually do have something I want to add to the conversation. So here's what I want to end with, is think about a group, and this may be specific to you, but think about a group that you could, in fact, bring together to have a dialogue. Who are they? What is the kind of the focus of the conversation that you would like to facilitate or have happen, even if you didn't facilitate it? Who would you like to come? Who are the parties? And what's the context, if you will, of what you would like? Yeah. Yeah. What I just want to emphasize, I want to emphasize one thing that Hart was trying to say, I think, too, around restorative justice. We, in our program, we do not do a restorative circle if they did not admit a part. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. They have to admit a part, and they have to be willing to make it better. If they don't do either of those, we don't do a circle. It's a little bit different with cops. I've had a lot of success with bringing people along that weren't party, into the party, to at least begin to have a conversation. Congress is so far out there. I would start with something more practical.
This is like any arbitration. Both sides need to be willing to.
Yeah.
Be willing to agree to a compromise on any dispute.
Yeah. I'd start so much simpler, smaller. Yeah. What would you?
My heart would like to bring parents apart, dads and moms.
You mean divorced parents?
Yeah.
Yeah. So bring families, group of dads. That's awesome. No, that's awesome. We do gender workshops, we call them gender and deep ecology, where there's men on this side, women on this side, men have their own time, women, and then they have a conversation. That's fantastic. I love it. Are you like a therapist type person, or?
Mediator.
Oh, so cool. Yeah. Honestly, a lot of the kids came from the Department of Juvenile Justice, so they were on probation. And we give them extra bonus community service hours. So for, let's say, 5 hours a circle, they get 10 hours of CE, or whatever they're called.
But what happens is that they tell, everybody experiences, they love it. They come back again, cops come back again. Now there's cops that come, they want to come every time if there's room. And the same thing with kids, so they tell somebody else, so it's much easier.
Yeah, and we've had young people want to become a cop out of a dialogue. Many, many kids. What's that? We do them once a month, typically once or twice a month. Mostly Gainesville and Alachua County. We've done about 6 or 7 different law enforcement agencies in our county, and then we've also trained, Tallahassee, right, and St. Lucie County. Yeah, yeah, and I think we're writing a book about this. There's a whole series called the Little Book series. You ever heard of them? They're amazing. Write it down. The Little Book of Restorative Justice, the Little Book of Strategic Peacebuilding. And so we pitched this idea to do the Little Book of Police Youth Dialogues. And it's made it through kind of the first layer, and the final people are going to hopefully approve it. And then I have one of our board members who's African American going to co-write it with me, who's like an expert in historical stuff. Yes?
You said that you were doing something in Rochester, New York. Is that...
Well, we have a proposal to them, and they're very interested, but they had an officer respond to a domestic battery call, and he was attacked and stabbed 20 times and probably is blind. And so the agency is deeply traumatized by this. Here he was responding to, an emergency call, and he got attacked. So they're not quite ready for it, but they have over 750 officers.
So if you did come up to do something, I'm just wondering about the reality of, to be coming up and maybe going to Kingston, where they just put out a report on tasing in the African American community.
Yeah, that would be amazing. We do have a 2-day training and then you guys would be trained. Any of you, you should be there. You should be there. You should be there. Well, it'd be better to do it with an agency, like your agency, so that there's cops getting trained and civilians, community members getting trained in how to facilitate this. And as part of that 2-day training, the final is you all actually facilitate a real dialogue with a law enforcement agency, like a police department, another word for department.
So we like it with a facilitator, a law enforcement facilitator, and a community member.
Yeah.
We're the community members,
Yeah. And we think it's really important to have a civilian facilitator as primary for kind of, maybe it's obvious reasons, but just so that it's not so stigmatized that this cop. Now, we also normally have cops come in uniform with their weapon. And that's a debate. But what I feel about it is that if a kid can see a cop in their uniform with their weapon, and see their humanity beyond that uniform, I say that's a good thing, because then they're going to see cops in uniform, and they'll otherwise, civilian clothes, I think it dilutes it personally. Thank you so much for coming. Somehow we'll get you my email, so if you want to be in touch, if you're interested in seeing kind of our outline, if you're interested in maybe hosting us for a training. And part of our model of training is we do training and then we do coaching. So we would come back 2 or 3 more times to do actual hands-on coaching so that you feel maximum confidence. Yes?
So I noticed in your presentation before you gave one kind of like metric of how things change. Like here's a measurable result of your work.
Right.
Normally,
Normally we do a pre and a post.
And did the police work as well?
With the dialogue, I'm saying. With the police youth dialogue, we're doing a pre and a post.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
But not like a long
And
yeah.
we,
Those are their stats.
yeah, they track it. They do a pre and a post.